Hello, everyone. I think it's time to get started. Very big welcome to all of you. Welcome to the Spinouts Briefing from Dealroom. Dealroom is a global platform that maps startup ecosystems, maps startups, innovation, venture capital, and crucially spinouts, which is what we're here to chat about today. I'm joined by Lorenzo, who is our head of research at Dealroom and has been doing an awful lot of work on spinouts in the last year and more, and so we'll get into it pretty quickly. Do drop into the comments where you're dialing in from, because it's always nice to see. We've got London and Luxembourg represented so far, and Lyon with Lorenzo. But yeah, let us know where you're calling from. We also will want to take questions from you as we're going along, and also at the end. So if you have questions about the data or anything related to spinouts and spin-out data in general, then drop them in. We'll try and keep an eye as we're going along and answer as many of them as possible. But yeah, over to you, Lorenzo.
Hi, thanks all for joining. Yeah, I'm the head of research at Dealroom, and yeah, we will present today a couple of insights from the recent report on European spinouts, but also in general, how these data are being integrated into Dealroom, why they matter, what are our plans for global expansion, what are the upcoming initiatives, and like Orla said, just feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat, and we will get to that during the presentation or at the end. So to start from, we just last week published this European spinout report, which we think it's really the first time whoever not only us does this kind of analysis, looking at all the spinouts coming from academia research center, not just in number, but the kind of value they are creating, what kind of trends they are behind that. And yeah, we did this with a few partners across Europe, Atlantic, a pre-seed investor from Germany and Europe, MITO Technology from another investor in deep tech and climate tech from Italy and Europe, and then 3 UK funds, Cambridge Innovation Capital for Science Enterprise and Northern Gritstone. And it's been quite a lot of work in these months, reaching out to all the university, research center, governments in Europe, patching this data that are often siloed a bit to be interpreted and to be reviewed by us, and then we put all together this kind of mapping for the first time. And so getting to the
we should maybe say a big thank you to all of the contributors of the data from the universities, and there's a big long list of them at the back of the report, because yeah, this is the first time this data has been collected across territories in this level of complexity and detail, and with their help.
Yeah, absolutely. I tried to put most of the names. There's a couple of hundred in the reports. Thank you, note. But I'm sure I forgot some, but there's been really a lot of, hundreds of people involved that helped us, paint this picture and, enable this data-driven decision-making and reporting across Europe. And then, yeah, getting to, then why, do we think that spinouts matter, and, why we did all this work, is that in general, what you have seen in the last few years globally, both in Europe, in the US, in China, is the venture capital and startup world shifting quite heavily to deep tech and life sciences. That there was, those kind of 1 decade and a half when there was all this software boom, there was a lot of, wins to be taken in that space. So venture capital really focused a lot on that and on marketplaces and on digital model. Now we saw, really a lot of focus going into reshoring manufacturing and defense and, novel technology for computing, for energy. And of course, spinouts are quite important when we get to this topic, to all these deep tech and life sciences. They make a good portion of the ecosystem. So they become increasingly important to nurture and to make sure that this pipeline, works, and we have, the origination of this company that they can scale. And when we look at, what even is a spinout, there's a lot of details that you can find in the full report, and you can ask us all the questions that you want also in this call. But just as a very quick note, basically a spinout is a startup that originates from research that was carried out in a university or research center. This might mean that the university is a shareholder, so it has equity in the company. It might not have equity, but have other agreements or royalty or licensing. Or in some cases, there can also be no like proper formal agreement, but we know very well that the company was really built on the research of the carried out in that university or research center, and we still allow some of these cases after a review from our team. What we don't consider a spin-out, it's companies that were just started before, or they just licensed some IP after, or also just companies that were supported by an acceleration program in the university, but they don't really come from the research done there. All those things might be interesting to track, and we track in different ways to support program, acceleration programs, but they're not the core focus of what we are discussing today. And of course, a lot of the spin-outs are related to deep tech and life sciences.
Yeah, and some questions we get on, why do we count some of those that have a clear link but no agreement? And that's for a couple of reasons. We really want to understand which are the hubs that are producing this great technology. We're not as bothered about how much the universities are kind of making out of it. Basically, we want to know where the innovation is happening, and because there are also different models in different countries that mean that actually it just works differently in different countries in terms of the shareholder or royalties or licensing. And so we do require kind of a very strong link, but not a piece of paper.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of want to track the societal value that's being created, and of course that might have some relationship with how much value the university is capturing, but that's not our core focus. The focus is really what startup came from that research. And to make an example, of course, again, in Europe, most countries have the IP is managed by the university today, but they're still, in Sweden, there's a lot of great university created, a lot of great spin-outs, and there's professor privilege. So you don't often have, this kind of agreement with the university, but we still count many of those as spin-outs, of course. So we want to compare, across countries, across different institutes. We don't want to compare how aggressive or what's the regulation in one country with the other. We want to compare what's coming out of that research and then seeing how that is being accelerated and enabled.
Yeah, and there's a question in the chat just clarifying that as well. So we're not including companies founded by the alumni of the university unless it's really based on the research that was happening there. It doesn't have to be at PhD level, actually. There are occasions when it's not that, like on Fido at Oxford was actually undergrad.
There's quite a few that are from students, but let's say most of the students found the startup are just alumni and not spin-outs. There are some cases where really, maybe they were doing a master thesis, they're working in a lab and they really developed the technology there, and something that we still consider a spin-out. But, of course, there's a wider ecosystem of alumni-funded startup, and we will get to that when we show later on also on the platform. But we also track that and we report that separately. Yeah, and when we look at the scope, what we track now in Europe is 17,000 of these spin-outs since 1990, with most of them really in the last 10, 15 years. And around half of that are deep tech and life sciences spin-outs, the most interesting one, the really commercializing research. And the rate at which these companies are being created has increased a lot. It was 100 per year, back in 2000, 2010. And now it's over 500 per year. So, this pipeline is, accelerating and improving. And some of the most valuable, companies in Europe have been coming out of, spinning out from academia. So there's company like Darktrace from Cambridge, Celonis from TUM, Olink from Uppsala, BioNTech from GSU Mainz in Germany, Ablins from Vrije University Brussels, and so on. So there's quite some notable unicorn and decacorn that came out from academic research in Europe. And when we look at the full pipeline, we identified 70 seats of what we call outlier outcomes. let's say. So these are unicorn or exits at or companies that exited at more than 1 billion of value, or companies that reach 100 million plus revenue. So there's a lot of, quite a lot of this. And then we have other 71 that are there between 25 and 100 million revenue. And before this, we have a very big pool of over 5,400 VC-backed companies, mostly at the early stage, that can still convert in time and reach this kind of scale of outcomes.
Yeah, we had a couple questions in the chat. One was about whether we include consultancies, and I said no, we don't.
No, not in the core scope of the analysis. Like what sometimes we get this data from kind of universities that is mostly when maybe a professor set up some kind of company that then has agreement with the university, but we don't consider that a startup. We don't consider that, especially deep tech life sciences. That's why also in our report, we took the focus on really deep tech life sciences, also because the link with the research is more like real and established. So yeah, we mostly take them out of any kind of analysis and reporting.
Yeah, and the other one was, as well as the charts of the percentage of VC that is deep tech, do you have percentage of VC that is deep tech VC that is spinouts? I think that's kind of coming up. We've got
that's coming up. In one bit. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, just to close off on the value creation. So around 400 billion have been created by deep tech and life sciences spinouts in Europe, which is most of all the spinout value. There's a few other spinout maybe in light software that make up to almost 500 billion in total, and this value has increased 7 times in the last decade. So of course, this value creation is still accelerating, and many of these spinouts are also pretty young. There's some historical successes, but what you see here in the 2 red shades, this is like the companies in the last 10 years, and they already make up almost 40% of the value, so the recent spinouts are growing much faster. There's a lot more of them, like we were discussing before, and so we expect this to increase quite rapidly in the next few years. And then coming to the question, there was 1 minute ago, like when we look at how much spinouts are of the total deep tech life science ecosystem, we looked at this through a few metrics. So when we look at just the number of companies, they were around 22% of the companies between 2010 2018, and now in the more recent years, they are making up 40%. So this means that there's more of this spin-out coming out of academia, and that they are making a bigger portion of the deep tech life science ecosystem in Europe. And when we look at the value creation, is around 1/3 since 2010, and 42% of the number of companies that raise at least 10 million plus funding. So it's also these spin-outs are creating more value than the other companies raising more funding. So in general, it's around 30-40% across different metrics of the ecosystem.
And before we were talking about deep tech being kind of 35-40% of tech.
Yeah.
General, so that works out around 10%.
Yeah, I think around 10%. Yeah, but it also depends. The more deep tech keeps gaining traction, then the more spinouts matter, of course. Yeah, and these companies created almost 170,000 jobs in Europe specifically. So that's also quite a strong value creation in terms of employment and local opportunities. When we look at funding, we also see strong activity. We project 9.1 billion by end of the year in Europe, and which is almost at the record level of 2021-2022. While if we look at the rest of tech, that's down almost 50%. So you have almost at record level versus down 50%. So there's a lot more strength and resilience in this ecosystem, and it's still double what we had pre-pandemic in 2019. So definitely the ecosystem has grown quite a lot. When we look at, who are the companies that raise the most, there's quite some variety, of topics, a lot around AI and autonomy, quantum, life sciences, space, nuclear energy. So there's, quite some range of topics, and also range of countries. I think we have 5 countries and almost all different universities represented in the top 9 rounds this year. So it's a very variegated and distributed ecosystem.
We've also got a question around the data set and whether it includes only surviving companies, or does it include also failed companies?
It includes also failed companies, and that's actually something we try to track as much as possible, even if often institutes and institutions try not to share that with us, because of course that means that you can actually track the trends. You can see how many survive at different stages and so on. So we definitely track failed ones, also the one that didn't raise any funding and died right away. What we try not to track is if it was just a project and didn't even become a company, then that's not really interesting. But if it was a company and it failed, yeah, definitely we track, and we have a lot of failed ones. Yeah, and this is also coming to the data. We both rely on what these institutions share with us and that we verify, but also we just go and look at the companies. Like all the companies that we identify as deep tech life sciences or founded by a professor or a PhD. We can look at the founder profile, we look at all the info that are available, and we can try to assess if they're a spin-out or not. So we also did a lot of this effort, independently from data that was shared with us, because of course, some institutions don't even know themselves, especially the historical ones back in the past. Maybe the TTO changed, or the different kind of entities in charge. So we build this data set also on our own, not relying on any kind of data input.
Yeah, it's also really important to track, because the same people might end up, often do end up founding something else, and track record of founding something, whether it's succeeded or not, is often a really important signal. So yeah, we try to track those as much as possible. We've got a few more questions coming in as well. Another is, have we tracked failures and successes vis-a-vis level of university equity and involvement? So are they more likely to fail if the university's taken a big chunk, I'm guessing, is the
yeah
question.
I think we are gonna work on this with the Royal Academy of Engineering, specifically on the UK, because just because the UK offer a unique opportunity for that, because with the company house register of filing, basically companies need to disclose a lot of information about their cap table. So you still cannot do everything, but you can more or less see, university that had equity in these companies. So we are now working to publish in May the analysis with the Royal Academy on UK Spinouts, and we look there between the relationship of equity and success. I think what from some independent analysis, from feedback from the ecosystem, and from also the recommendation we put in the report, typically if the share starts to be very high, like above 25%, that's typically as a strong impact on company performances, because many VC will not want to invest. I'm not sure we are gonna see a strong difference between the 10 or 15%. It might have some minor differences, but broadly those are things that you can fit very easily in terms of equity. But yeah, those are more or less the ranges. But it's very hard to have this because there's no transparency on these terms. The universities don't like report a list with all the terms that they gave to startup. So there's really no way to make this analysis in most cases.
Yeah, and then there's a couple of other questions about the funding. One is that the chart showed that maybe pre-seed and seed was reducing. So there's a couple of points to make there. So the The grey is a projection for the rest of the year, and that's for all of the different segments. So the 2025 data is not complete yet. It's up to the end of probably September or something, or October. And the other is that there is typically a little bit of a reporting lag on very early stage rounds. And that's because you might, for example, when a company raises their Series A, you hear having previously raised 1 million from the same investors or something like that, or it just takes them longer to kind of to announce it. And so we would expect every year there's a sort of little bit of a correction up on the blue segments. So that would be a little bit of the explanation there. It's unlikely that it has actually reduced, but it's a typical thing that we see in the charts. And then the other question was about whether safes and convertibles are accounted for in these numbers or just direct equity investments.
They are, if we have this information, of course, if it's somewhat that we track through the filings or through, any kind of news or release or, company, whatever information, then yes, they are included. So yeah, they are still, kind of equity as soon as they convert. So yeah.
Yeah, and we also got been directed to HISA, the database of spinouts in the UK. We're using HISA and
we are using HSA. Yes, we have some differences with HSA. We track a bit more spinouts, both because HSA last reporting is couple of years, like the last reporting year that they asked is 2023, 2024. So we have spinouts, from the rest of 2024 and 2025 in the UK, and both because of a few tricky stuff, like we will disclose all of that in the UK spinout report that coming up. But yeah, basically all the spinouts that you have in HSA, we do have. We have a few more, and we then verify with the single TTOs, why do we have these 10 spinouts more than HSA, and then we discuss with them and see, okay, this makes sense, we still report. So we don't bound ourselves entirely to HSA. We think it's an amazing, data set, and we put actually in the report like a big like a section on that saying, that we wish more countries, more, either a regional or national level learn from that, because it's, a level of transparency that is really great. But there's a couple of things that are still missing in the database.
Yeah, I think it's going to be developed and even more. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah, then I think one in the report, we say a lot more about the segments. We show, the top universities for robotics and for quantum. We show the numbers for all of these segments. But something that the only thing I want to show today is that some segments are much more driven by spinouts than others. So, in quantum and in photonics, like the vast majority of companies are spinouts, especially of the successful ones. Also in sectors like nuclear, in general, in life sciences, this is quite a lot. And instead, there are some areas where this is a bit less, like especially robotics and defense, because maybe, it's mostly founders with commercial experience, or maybe even in the case of defense, until couple of years ago, there were very few research projects about that, for all sorts of reasons. So there are some segments where, spinouts are like really the major engine, and some where they're a bit less relevant. So depending also what you're looking for, that might, change your assessment and see how much of the pipeline is coming from there. And yeah, then coming to where the spinouts are, this is like a distribution of not where the companies are based, but where they come from, where the institute they span out from is. And so you can see visually there's a lot of dots in here. We cut it at only 5+ deeply realized spinouts, otherwise it would be completely like full them up. But there's of course a big cluster in Oxford, Cambridge, London, Northern UK, Belgium and Netherlands. They're are actually almost not visible from the map because all of the dots are together. There's, a lot in Paris, but also around Grenoble and Lyon in France. You have Zurich, Lausanne, and Geneva in Switzerland. Munich is the main hub in Germany. Then there's Berlin, and then there's a few other like Aachen and so on. In the Nordics, you have Copenhagen, Stockholm, Helsinki, and then in Southern Europe, you have Lisbon, Madrid, Barcelona, Milan, and Turin, for instance. So there's a lot of this. It's quite a distributed ecosystem, even if there are some top universities.
And Ireland, as Conrad.
Yeah, and Ireland, especially in Dublin and a few other hubs. And also Glasgow and Edinburgh in Scotland. Yeah, I'm gonna miss someone to mention, but you can find all the details in the full report and explore the map. But then, yeah, what we did, and this is way too complex to spend all the time here now, but it's just to say that we don't wanna put the emphasis just on the number of spinouts, because what we saw working in different countries with different actors is that if there's any kind of reporting, it's only number of spinouts without any metric on the success of these companies, without any tracking of that. And we actually think that's the most important bit is if these companies are successful. So when we rank the university research center and countries in the report, we used all metrics related to the kind of value. As much as possible. So we picked 6 metrics. One is the number of VC-backed spinouts. So it's to the question that there was before, we care about closed ones, but only if at least they did something, If they raised, at least some institutional financing, means that the company actually tried to do something and maybe then failed, okay, or maybe didn't grow too much. But we want to cut out all the web just projects and didn't really go anywhere. While instead for the very recent ones, we put this metric number of spinouts since 2022 because they still have, might, reach these stages, and also because it's important that there's transparency on the very recent outcomes. So we rank that, and then we rank number of spinouts that reach 10 million plus funding, as a metric to say is the ones that have scaled, at least a bit. And then very big outcome like unicorn 1 billion exits and the VC funding raised and the combined value of these companies. All these metrics have a logic, to make it balanced, and then they look at different kind of also distribution. Some are more skewed by very big outcomes, some less. So to balance a bit out. And then we ranked all the institutes countries across these 6 metrics and created a final score. So that's what then we show in all of our rankings in the report. So for instance, here are the top 10 universities, and you can see all of these 6 criteria and then the final score that is made 1 to 100.
Yeah, just to catch up on a couple of questions from the chat as well. One is on when there will be an update of this report, because I think there is enthusiasm to include an update of, so the Netherlands is going to be basically sharing some data and would like an update before Hello Tomorrow. Well, we're aiming to make this an annual report, and on a European level, we're going to be updating the data all the time in the platform though, and also very keen to work with anybody who wants to look at their own institution or region or country. Specifically, as we mentioned, we're going to be doing a report with the Royal Academy of Engineering on UK spinouts, but on a European level, that'll be kind of this time next year.
Yeah, for the full report yearly, because it was 120 slides and it takes a bit to update everything. But for the only table of the universities, if a lot of data come from a certain region, then we can pull again quite easily the ranking and showcase for a report on a nation or something else. So this will be updated many times during the year. and yeah, so if new data come in, we had some submission from a few universities after the publishing of the reports. All of that will be reflected because this is live in the platform, and it's built in a way that we can update it very easily.
Yeah, and some useful shares of different definitions of spinouts from Myron at Mass Ventures. I think we're very similar to what you use in terms of our thinking.
Yeah, I cannot see, but I trust because we've been talking quite a bit by email. Yeah, and then of course in the report we rank, the top 20, the top 40 universities. There's a lot more in the live table that you can look, up to 200 and more. But the top uni, we see a lot of UK, with Oxford and Cambridge, Switzerland, and then in UCL, Imperial College, Bristol, Switzerland, doing an amazing job with Zurich, Lausanne, and University of Zurich. Then we have TU Munich, which is a known great hub in Germany, DTU in Denmark, quite a few from Sweden, France, Belgium, Netherlands, and so quite a lot of diversity. And we have Finland, we have Portugal coming in when we look at the top 40. So there's quite a lot of this spread out. And something we also made quite an effort to include is that in some of these reporting, research centers are left out. They're a bit more tricky. There's a bit less visibility sometimes, but we worked on this especially because in France and Germany, a lot of the research comes from some of these distributed research centers, but also in the Nordics, in Belgium, there's quite a bit. So we also rank those, CNRS, Max Planck, both aggregated at the institute level. We have in the platform also details, like Proxima Fusion is, Max Planck in general, but there's also the specific Max Planck, for plasma physics. So on the single company profile, you can often see those details. But for the reporting, we then aggregated at the single center level.
Yeah, we had a question as well about Central and Eastern Europe not being featured too much in the report. Is that due to missing data or because there are almost zero? So maybe first on the map that we showed before, because there weren't too many dots, that was showing only places that had at least 5 spinouts.
Yeah, this was just for graphical reason, so there are some. I'd say it's a couple of things. First, in general, this is like deep tech life sciences a bit less in some regions, like in CE, there's still, this ecosystem is still growing in many places. And also, yes, the tracking, so we did our own, like review of companies finding this data, but there's also a bit of lack of the reporting of this data. Both, maybe the university doesn't have any page where they say, oh, these are our spinouts. There's no national collection effort. There's a bit of these missing pieces that makes it also the collection a bit less easy. So I think we do have a few that maybe are also not visible in the map, but there's for sure a few that we miss, and we welcome working with the different. We work with our partners in Poland, in Prague, in the Baltics. We also had a pre-launch of the report. We asked to the different TTOs. We received some input, but let's say less than in other countries. So this is due to both a bit less of discretion, but also I think on the reporting side.
If you have any contacts for us that we should be in touch with, do please connect us. We'd love to talk to universities and TTOs in Central Eastern Europe as well. And then another question, which is, are you looking at metrics like time from inception to exit? This is from TechLeap. They believe it's important to look at various lead times as success indicators.
Yeah, I think that's a tricky metric. We're happy to look at it. There's I think the point is that typically, I don't think I put the exit slide here. In the full report, there's quite a nice slide on exit, but we, like a lot of the exits are small exits. So, and the valuable one are the big exits typically. So you should look at a very small sample of the big exits. I think in the report we show 6 this year was actually very strong from the exit, side. We had seats 1 billion plus exits. But in general, if we look at the big outcomes, is a few tens maybe across a few years. So it's not a lot to look at exit timeline. If I remember correctly, for instance, this year of the seats 1 billion exits, Oxford Ionics is from 2019, from Oxford. Organos is from 2008 from Oxford. So already quite some time difference. And then there's Araris Biotech also was, I think, from 2019 or similar. Then another one was from 1998. So you have very different timelines. So it's an analysis I'm happy to run. I don't know if it's the most meaningful. What I'm mostly interested in is like the conversion rate and the success rate, of all the spin-outs from 10 years ago, how many, became something. And that's reflected in the metrics that we chose, the 1 billion plus exit, the combined value. So if these were good exits, that they make up to those metrics.
And another question, does this normalize the size of the national research budget?
Yeah, so yes, we have this more or less here. So we chose per capita and per number of STEM graduates as metrics, in the sense that typically there's not like a reliable, in my experience, not a reliable metric on national budget, like in the sense that the budget for this institute can come from both EU sources, national, other sources, and we don't really, like, our logic was not to say how much money you get from your government, but maybe more how much, like kind of capital or pool of talent do you have to create this value. We didn't publish this year for a couple of reasons, but we have it internally, and we're happy, to share with clients or other people interested, like comparison standardized also for the single uni research center, on the budget and on the number of staff there. We gather those data and we run those analyses internally. We didn't publish because I think we want to publish a public table where we can get the feedback from the ecosystem, because there's a lot of tricky bits. We saw that these data are not really standardized in the reporting across different countries, different universities, if there's a medical center or not, if there's this and that. You have a lot of judgment choices. So we prefer, since there was already so much that we introduced in this first report, to leave that out for a moment, but we have those comparisons. Like, to make an example, among the top uni, something like Zurich has like 3 times the budget of like Delft, or like 2-3 times the budget of Delft. So of course, then when you compare per budget, you get a slightly different outcome. And we have submitted those data, for instance, for the Dutch government for some reporting that's coming out soon. But yeah, we didn't publish fully, but it's available upon request.
Yeah, I'm just going to share the link for the full report here as well for people, if people want to download it. As Lorenzo said, it's 120 pages, so we obviously weren't going to be able to get through it all today. But if you see that button on the slide that's there now, you can see a full list of all of the universities, all of the underlying data metrics that are going into this ranking as well. So that's probably useful to play around with for many people from different countries and institutions as well.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I think about countries, the UK is the largest ecosystem, followed by Germany, Switzerland, and France. And when we look per capita, per number of graduates, we see Switzerland really, leading. And then, all the like Nordics, like Denmark, Sweden, Finland doing very well. UK doing well also on like a per capita basis. Belgium also created quite some value. And then you have quite a conversion, around, Ireland, Netherlands, Germany, around, similar scoring. And I think that's it of there's a lot more in the full report. There's, some recommendation about, suggested also spin-out term, how to think about success metrics, what kind of support, and a lot of other details. So, please explore the full report and, let us know what you think and what question do you have. I think what we want to showcase is also, of course, how these data are like, and how you can navigate them, actually see the companies behind and see what's happening there. So want to spend a few minutes there. And just to mention, before I go in the platform, we're gonna work on, like, at the moment we have really like a great coverage in Europe because of this project that we did, but we are working now on the global one. We do have some regions that are already quite good in, like, due to our ecosystem partnership, like in Canada, in Australia, in Israel, but we want to scale this up, to all the rest of our ecosystem partner in the world. So in particular, we have one project with the World International Property Organization, WIPO. So we are going to work with them on the Global Innovation Index that you might know, on a special edition about the science-based entrepreneurship and spin-outs. So we are going to work both on emerging market, and mature one to track these spin-outs globally. So if you want to, help us, work with us on this, please reach out to your account manager or to support the room, and let's work together on this. But I think, from all for anyone else, there will be a lot more global data in the coming months, also beyond Europe on this topic.
It's the question I get asked the most about this is, and how does this compare to the US? But yeah, it's going to be coming next year.
Yeah, exactly. I think the US has some very good tracking that will work with them to implement, but also work locally, different parts of the US to integrate this data. And then we will tell you the answer.
Yeah, let's see some of this data in action and what you can do with it in a live way as well, maybe.
Yeah, sure. So let me change the sharing to full screen. Yeah, so you will receive also this, after the call. So there's all of these are links that show you how to track these things. But let's get into some of these things. So, just going into the bar in the room, you can just, type Spinouts, and the right things to choose is either the company rounds, this means this company had a spin-out round, or the tag. They're really the same. We have an automation add in the two. So for instance, you can search for spin-outs since 2020, you will get, the 6,000 plus. How this looks on the single profile, it's a transaction that we have, typically the first transaction often. So you have, the spin-out round, and you have these investors that are, research centers or universities. And for instance, in the case of Proxima Fusion, there are spin-out from Max Planck, that we call Max Planck Society, all the research center together, but specifically from the Institute of Plasma Physics. Of course, you can see the specific profile of this research center or university, and in there you can search for all of their spinouts. So if you are interested on like a research center or university specifically, you can go also on their profile and just look at things there. So, if you are interested on spinouts from a certain research center or from a different university, you can look at that. We also released some features recently.
Just before you move on, actually, we should say any query that you build in this bar, you can also save. And when you save that as a search, then you can get alerts anytime there's a new match. So if you've got spin-out since 2020, you could also add on, a particular sector if you wanted to, or a particular institute, and then save that, and it means that you'll get notified anytime there is a new company that matches all of that criteria. And it will.
And maybe if you want to be like the first ticket in the company, you can look at, the ones that are not even yet VC-backed, or things like that, or they don't get raised, a Series A or something, and maybe, you discover some cool company that you're interested in. And you can, of course, just cut this also for a specific sector, like, if you are interested only in semiconductor or robotics or whatever, then you build your own query and then you save that.
Yeah, so 117 semiconductor spinouts specifically that are not yet funded and founded in the last 5 years. So already quite a nice list. And yeah, you would get a notification up where there's a little flame or at the bell at the top of the screen, but also you can sign up for a daily email that will just tell you any new matches to any of your saved searches as well.
Yeah, exactly. And of course you can, so we saved some of these queries here. You can also look at this from the founder perspective, and even look, of course, just as, like companies founded by PhD founders, for instance. Not a lot of them will be Spinouts, but not all of them. So you can, look at the ones even just this year on the last, couple of years, and maybe you also find some companies that are even in stealth or just at inception. So that's also another way to navigate this data.
Yeah, and maybe to the question earlier about, in the report we don't include alumni founded startups, we would just get spinouts, but in the platform you can also do that. So you can look at companies that are founded by any alumni.
Yeah, so you can both, and I maybe show you where this comes from. So like, for instance, you can look at a query like this, founders in the last 2 years from Stanford, for instance. And how to do that is you go in the advanced filter in founders, and then you have a lot of, like options here, but you have, you can choose one or multiple universities. So, if you can put a couple here or a list that you want. And then, of course, you can save this to see new matches and new ones. So, of course, like something like physical intelligence use such as from Stanford already. I think they raised like a very big round just a couple of days back. You can also, and this is a really new feature in the last week, just for easier aggregation, if you are, interested on a certain country, or if you have specific investment thesis, you can just look at companies that where alumni studied in a certain country. So, for instance, Poland has created a lot of great founders, but some of them build, abroad and from the start. So you can, in the same section, you have a feature to just choose whatever country or city, and then just say, I want founder that studied in Poland. So, you can put here Poland, and you will get that option. And we build the same feature for spinouts. So if you want to see like spinouts from the UK, for instance, you don't need to, you can just go in the filters here, and you can just say founders from an institute that was based in the United Kingdom. So because this, some of these companies might be actually, built from day one in another country in the US or somewhere else. So, this feature helps you with all those tracking and all those use cases.
Yeah, and we're talking about academic institutions here, but you can also do this for companies in terms of the alumni or the founder, the founder mafias or founder factories. Less relevant to what we were showing in the report, but it is super cool. And if you want to see which companies have been founded by people that previously worked at Stripe or at SpaceX or at BAE, then you can do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you can then, for a single university, research center, or, city, whatever, you can also report on the impact and track trends. So let's take an example here. For instance, if I'm the University of Oxford or someone, related to that or just interested in that, I can, build my query with, just University of Oxford, the spinouts, and then I would have, like, this is the default view. So I would have, just a little list of companies, but then if I click on show stats, then I can, see the trend in time, how much, value is being created by this company, by by year of founding. I can say, how many employees, how many jobs this company created. And similarly, I can also see the fundraising trend and things like that. So there are all these queries here that you can also explore, and they can be used for your reporting. But of course, you can also save these searches and get alerts if something happens to your portfolio companies or things like that.
Yeah, and I think what's important is this is in real time. So yeah, you can be notified as soon as something happens with one of them, but also for the portfolio tracking, you can see in a real-time basis how things are progressing in terms of funding or in value created or jobs. But also back to the sort of spin-outs versus alumni piece, I think a lot of universities often have not all actually, but often have a decent idea about their spin-outs and don't have a grasp on the level of alumni founded startups at all. And like, just to demonstrate a bit of the difference, I looked up Oxford the other day, and so there are 7 unicorns that have been produced out of Oxford as spin-outs, but in terms of alumni founded unicorns, there are 80 that have been produced from Oxford.
Yeah.
65 of which are not in the UK, by the way. So yeah, if you want to kind of get a really nice broad view of the sort of entrepreneurial impact of your institution or of a basket of them, or a country's educational entrepreneurial output, then you can as well.
Yeah, so on the single university or research center profile, you can see all the alumni, filter this up by location, by sector, whatever, and the spin-outs. You can also search the same information in the company page like we were doing before. But yeah, of course, there's a lot more alumni, and then you can see, maybe the one that in very recent or the big historical successes, or if they go abroad or stay in the UK, you can do all analysis like this.
Yeah. So I know we're almost out of time now, but if there are any last questions, then people can drop them into the chat. We are also offering, if Lorenzo, maybe you want to go back to the
yeah.
If anyone would like to have a chat with us about any of this stuff, so there is an opportunity to sign up for like an hour session with Lorenzo, and to talk about your needs and any kind of spin-out related questions that you have. So yeah, we'll send the link out after this as well, but you can grab it there. It'll be first come, first served if you do want to continue the conversation. And yeah, we're always open to new suggestions. We've been working in this space for a while now, but we still feel like there's an awful lot more that we can and want to do. So yeah, unless there are any more questions, we will say thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.